Hi, I'm Bubbles. This is a tour of my studio. Usually my videos will be all about the miniatures and whatever I'm painting at the moment, or the models, but I thought for my first video people might like to see where I actually do my stuff. So we'll end up with the garage and the painting desk, but just to start off, I will start where my computer is and where Blender and the websites are. So this is my lounge room basically, and I'm rocking the Mac Studio down there, and I work from my main TV for, ease of comfort and just sitting on the sofa doing things. A lot of my models come from either Cults or this side here, which is my mini factory, and that's where you can get a lot of the STLs that you then print out. Once I have an STL, I pull it into a program called Blender, totally free program, works great for modifying and molding the digital models. So I do things like separate parts of the model. So here, for example, you can see this kobold character that I'm going to be using in a role play game, and I've separated out the body from the staff. Now, the reason why I do that is that if I switch into my printing studio software from Bamboo Labs, you can see that I actually separate the staff and lay it flat for printing. I find that works much better rather than trying to print this staff being held by a character. It just doesn't really work very well. So yeah, that's why I key and cut things in Blender that I can then move into Bamboo Studio. And I do that, you can see here, if I just hide the body for a second, you can see how I've put in a little rod there, and then there's a little hole in the model. That just means it's nice and easy to connect them when I'm going to glue them together. This is a display cabinet that I have in my main lounge that I set up to host a diorama project that I built, and some of the larger models like the Mando and God of War. There's also a chainsawed prot, which I worked on recently. And here is another bookshelf, which is also in the lounge room, which has some of the sort of medium-sized models. I didn't print the bobbleheads, of course, but these are mimics, like dice mimics and barrel and chest and stuff like that. So just stuff that you have out on display for a bit of fun. Moving on from the lounge room, the next stop in the tour is the laundry basin. And you may think that's an odd thing to have in this tour, but let me tell you, you do need to have a place to wash your brushes, to, clean out stuff. And also, if you don't want to piss off your wife, then you also need it to be like metal with a stainless steel, can really get it looking clean and nice again, because if this gets too dirty, I get in a lot of trouble. But yeah, I'm constantly here washing brushes, washing my hands, all stuff like that. Garage. And this is just like a drop saw, but I also have a multi-purpose workspace where I can set this up. Like I've got these little lever arms that hold that, and it just gives me a little bit of room to create like diorama and other sort of projects. And over here is where the magic actually happens. This is the Bamboo Labs A1. At the moment, as you can see, it's currently printing. So it's 38% done of its project. I have my setup where I have the filament reel above the machine and it just pulls it down. I prefer that. These things can have a lot of vibration, and I find the weight of the printer filament can really wobble when it's attached to the machine. So I'm not a fan of that. That's why I have it separate. And yeah, I find that works much better for me. So with this, it's just a very quick hack sort of job. It's basically a bit of wooden doweling and a bit of plumber's tube there, and that way it's got a couple of things and I find it moves really well. So that goes down into the printer. Next to the printer, I mean, I've got a little workshop here, but up here I also have some storage for like printer filament and oils and grease and thing with the, you know, sort of tools that you need for 3D printer repair. Okay, so we'll start the garage tour now with the painting area. Before we get over to the main area though, there is a area of storage down here which I also have, which is all related to painting and diorama sort of stuff. So these are just like boxes that I have leftovers from stuff I bought, and sometimes if you're working on a large project you want to spread them out. This little storage box that I've made here has like backup paints and backup brushes and glue and stuff like that, some mixing balls. I do put mixing balls in my paints. There's some like enamel resin in there, and you know, for water project sort of stuff, clear coats as well, PVA glue, that sort of stuff. Up here I have some of these Taubman sample pots, which are just a bit bigger than your regular kind of paint tubes that you buy for hobbyist stuff, and these are mainly used for dioramas, and they're like $6 each, so they're like really, you know, cost effective for Bunnings. Alright, moving over here I have my power board, which has individual switches, which I really like. It gives you a bit of control. Like for example, you can see I have an LED light turned off at the moment. It is a very bright LED, but it does kind of strobe a bit. But yeah, it provides a lot of light on where I'm painting. So yeah, it's nice to be able to turn that on or off as needed. So starting from the left over here, we have Montmartre paints. These are an Australian company. And I tend to use these for my colour blocking. So when you first print out a model, it's the colour of the filament, in my case, so that's white. And then you prime it, which makes the paint stick easier to it and gets it ready for painting. Before I get into like these kind of paints though, what I tend to do is like do my colour blocking with this Montmartre style paint. Just gets the model in the right kind of tone, and then I, you know, go into the Vallejo or AK paints later on. Up here I have a range of handy tools, you know, tweezers, pliers of course are required for the removal of supports of the 3D prints. So when it comes off the printer, you do need to spend a fair bit of time getting it all into a good state with no strings and, you know, remove all that good stuff. The couple of palettes, they are for the next area, which is the Vallejo terrain that I use. You don't really use a brush with that, so I find having a couple of small little palettes, they work really well with that. Okay, so in the middle, of course, you've got whatever projects you're working on at the moment. Here I've got a couple of bigger projects, the Barbarian and the Lady Riding the Bear, are from My Mini Factory project called Might Against the Maledict. And these cups, which I've printed out and painting up as gifts for Christmas, those come from an epic fantasy pack is what they're called. But you know, whatever you're working on at the time. I also have one little guy over there, which is going to be my character in my next roleplay group. Okay, so moving to the back and also around the side there, you can see all my paints. I think there's like 190 at last count, something in that ballpark. Most of them are Vallejo, either the model colour or the game colour range. I do also have a bit of the AK Interactive 3rd generation paints. And up the top here in the background, I do have some enamel paints, Humbrolls and Tamiya. It used to be that you really needed to go to enamel paints for your metallics because, you know, they just did far better metallics. But the acrylics these days, I find, have come a long way, and I find I'm using those enamel paints less and less these days. Also, part of this is the lighting setup. You can see I've got some LED strip lighting behind the paints. I used to have just one row on these shelves with the Montmartre stuff and the Vallejo and that all mixed together with different heights. But then, yeah, I found I was running out of space. So what I've done is I've moved all the Montmartres together in the one area, which enabled me to create little shelves so that I could get 2 rows per shelf of the dropper bottle paints. The negative to that, though, was that I found that the back row was quite dark and the shadows meant I couldn't really see the colours. As you can see quite clearly, I paint the caps. Paint is essentially my hobby, and painting models is my hobby, and I have a nice collection. I do like it to look like a collection, so I don't leave it at the bottles black or grey or whatever colour they come in, which is why this group of paints is down here now, because those are new paints that I've just been sort of getting the caps ready. Anyway, moving on, here we have my wild collection of brushes, finer stuff at the front, middle range stuff at the back, and then my dry brushing brushes at the very, very back. I tend to buy cheap brushes. I don't spend a lot of money on quality ones because I abuse the heck out of them and then they end up, you know, falling apart anyway. I do have a wet palette up there, by the way, but I hardly use it. I tend to use these palettes or either the baking paper. If I want to do some kind of blends, that's just, you know, I'm old school. I don't airbrush, and I kind of have techniques which are quite old, I guess, in that term, but yeah, that is what it is. I also have, for removing the strings on the models when I'm getting rid of all the supports, a nice quality craft knife. Does good. This one I like because it's got 2 flat sides, so it doesn't roll like the previous one that I had was metal, and it just would roll right off the table. So I think that's a bit safer and a bit nicer. Okay, so up the top here, at the back, we have some paddle pop sticks, like ice cream sticks for mixing stuff. Then in front of that, I have glue. Gorilla Glue I tend to use for the bases, like on some of my models, I actually have holes where I can put magnets on the bases. Magnets like these guys here. You just stick one of those on, and then it makes transporting models for like gaming really super easy, because I tend to stick metal on the bottom of my transport boxes, and then, you know, you just stick the model onto the metal, and yeah, it's super easy for transport. This glue is not to label. It's actually glue called Sky Grip 16. It comes in a squeeze pack sort of thing, which I find tends to go everywhere. So yeah, that's why I've rebottled it. Just makes it a little bit easier to use. The main primer that I use is this unpronounceable name, but it's the best primer that I have found. I also have like Vallejo ones. I have used a lot of different primers in the past, but yeah, I just tend to stick to the grey of this one. I find it the best. Then next we have the clear protection and the varnishing. I've got a little bit left of this micro flat stuff. That's what I have been using until pretty recently, but I've just recently switched to AK's version, and it is, as they say, very, very matte, and I find it gives a good finish. Just kind of wrapping up the tour. I got like a rotary Dremel thing, attachments and that down there, nothing too exciting. But up here I do have a whole bunch of basing equipment. Oh yeah, and plus there's little bits and bobs of stuff that eventually I'll work on it. Just kind of need a place to go away. But yeah, in here I've got like little rocks and pebbles and flock and grass and all sorts of stuff that you can, you know, spread out for your bases. I do like to try and elevate my basing a bit when I can. But yeah, that's pretty much my tour. It's my nice chair. And yeah, that's pretty much me, and a very full garbage box down the bottom because I've been getting rid of lots of stuff, sorting out things. But yeah, that is the painting studio. So hope you've enjoyed this quick tour of my place.